This is Larry Frank, Frankly Speaking Sports. Boy, oh boy, folks, what a great couple of segments we have in store for you today. Just incredible. You know, a lot of things have been going on with the Memphis Grizzlies, going back to probably the last 9 games of the season. The head coach was changed, they lose in the playoffs, Desmond Bain is traded, and obviously the biggest news in the last couple of days was the stupidest, ridiculous, ludicrous comments by Stephen A. Smith about players not wanting to come to play in Memphis because of crime. How stupid is this guy? Does he forget where he came from? He came from Hollis, Queens. He used to be part of a fan base that rooted for, whether it was the Yankees, the Mets, the Knicks. We know he's a big Knicks fan. You tell me that stars didn't come to New York because of the crime rate back in the 70s and 80s? The Clyde Frazier's, the Dave DeBush's, the Earl Monroe, the Bill Bradleys. Come on, Stephen A. Smith. What the heck are you thinking, my man? Come on. This is stupid and crazy. I'm going to tell you something, folks. Memphis is beautiful. It's just like any other city. Every single state has cities and suburbs that have good areas and that have bad areas. And Memphis is no different. I'm going to tell you that right now. Memphis has a lot. It's the fastest growing tourist attraction city in all the United States, from Graceland to the Civil Rights Museum to different boat tours. It's an incredible city. And Stephen A. Smith was completely off base and wrong. You know, this is the problem with Stephen A. Smith. This is the problem. He has more crap coming out of his mouth than coming out of his butt. It's just incredible that he could not just locally, but on a national level, go ahead and knock this great city. And I give a lot of credit to John Morant, Desmond Bain, even after he was traded, sticking up for the city of Memphis. I don't understand what he was thinking. Every single city. You think people don't come there because of the crime rate? Come on. They don't come there. The problem with Memphis compared to the New Yorks, the Bostons, St. Louis, Houston, who signed their head coach today, and other cities, I don't know if I mentioned Los Angeles, is that they are a small market media area compared to these other big cities. Now, don't get me wrong. Memphis has a a decent population, but at the end of the day, it's not like a media capital of the world. Don't get me wrong. But players, you never heard of a player saying they don't want to play in Memphis, or they don't like Memphis, or they don't feel safe in Memphis. This is where Stephen A. Smith has to stop trying to get a story because he's not the center of attention, just to go ahead and make up some completely falsification of a city that is actually a great city. And for the fans of Memphis, it was wrong. For the people of Memphis, it was wrong. For the political people involved in Memphis, it was wrong. And in my opinion, Stephen A. Smith owes an apology to the entire city of Memphis. I just don't understand it. He grew up in New York. I grew up in New York. We both grew up being Knicks fans in the 70s and 80s. We both went to games. You went to the Bronx to watch the Yankees. It didn't hold you back. You went to Flushing to see the Mets at Shea Stadium. It didn't hold you back. Every single city, like I mentioned earlier, has crime, Stephen A. Smith. And for you to go ahead and do this was not just an embarrassment for the city of Memphis, but it's an embarrassment to the sports media world that you can be so naive and so stupid and make such poor comments about Memphis. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a quick break so that our affiliates can go ahead and identify themselves. And when we come back, we got a very special guest for you. We're going to have Rob Fischer, the sidelines and pre and post game host for the Memphis Grizzlies, joining us. We'll be back in 15 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Sports. In the first segment, we talked about the comments made by Stephen A. Smith and how he's saying that athletes don't want to come to Memphis to play with the Grizzlies. But, even before then, this is a team that has had some controversy. Towards the end of the year, they changed their head coach. They trade Desmond Bain, and it goes on and on and on. And I'll tell you what, our next guest, I should say, is the Memphis Grizzlies sideline pre and post game host. Let's welcome in Rob Fischer. Rob, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing well, Larry. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Hey, Rob, before we get to Stephen A. Smith's controversial comments, there's a lot more I want to talk to you about, and I want to start towards the end of the season. When Taylor Jenkins, with 9 games left, got fired from the Memphis Grizzlies, how surprised were you at the timing? Because here was a team that was pretty much a shoo-in, at least for the play-in tournament. So I question the timing, not necessarily the move, but the timing of the move. How surprised were you?
Well, I think everybody was surprised just because that doesn't happen. With 9 games left in a season, a playoff team fires their coach. I mean, it rarely happens. And what's crazy is a week later, it happened again with the Denver Nuggets firing their coach right before the playoffs started too. So it was kind of bizarre that it happened twice in the NBA. I think that it was while it was surprising. I think people were more taken off guard than surprised because I think a lot of people believed it was going to happen in the offseason. So the timing was just kind of odd. But I think the Grizzlies as an organization pretty much felt, well, we feel like it's a downward spiral, and it did feel like a downward spiral there at the end of the season, that maybe we can salvage something here at the end of the year. And frankly, they didn't really salvage much at the end of the year. Saw a couple of different looks offensively from Tomas Isalo, but didn't really salvage much by firing the head coach.
No, and this is a head coach he's been with the team, I think it's been 6 seasons if I'm correct, but he's been in the playoffs 4 out of the last 5 seasons. So it's not like he hasn't taken this team to the playoffs.
No, but there are just, to me, from my point of view, and not feeling what the organization's feeling, I think things just kind of run out of time. And I think that was the case in Memphis because I'm in the huddle. I get to be in the huddle during every timeout. And I don't think he lost the players, as some people reported. I think the players were still listening to him and there was still good communication back and forth. But then it just wasn't translating. Like it just got tired, like it ran out. And I think that was the case here, that it just kind of ran its course and a new voice was needed. And I really like Taylor Jenkins. I admire him a lot. I enjoyed our time around him, and I think he's a heck of a basketball coach, and I think he'll get a job rather soon, and he'll do a great job somewhere else.
Tomas Isalo, is he the right man for this position?
We hope so. We're going to find out. I mean, when you hire coaches, that don't have an NBA resume, you don't know. And you'll find out what happens. I'll say this. To me, a lot of coaching in the NBA, a lot of coaching in the NBA is having relationship with your players and having your players listen to you and you getting your message across to players. And I think in his short time as the head coach, he was able to do that. And I think the players spoke glowingly of him after the season as well, that made you feel pretty good that they trust in him and they believe in him. And I think that's really the biggest part of being a head coach. I mean, they all know X's and O's. They all know how to run an offense and how to scheme up a defense. They all know how to do that. It's a matter of relaying that to the players and getting the message across and then it translating to the floor. And, that's your biggest test. And We'll find out. We'll find out if that's truly the case. But I think early indications were it was a good sign, at least to see early on.
And you talk about bad timing. We talked about the coach getting let go. How about the trade of Desmond Bain right in the middle of the NBA Finals? I mean, did this come as a shock to you, or did you expect maybe during the offseason that this move was going to be made?
Well, I think when the offseason started, Zach Kleiman, general manager of the Grizzlies, basically said that the finish of this season was unacceptable, and that they're nowhere close to being a contender in the Western Conference. So I think he believed that. He said that, and I think we all believe then, all right, well, it should be an active offseason. If they're not close, they need to improve this team. And I think to improve the team, the only way you could do it was probably getting rid of one of the big three players. And I feel like they're not going to get rid of John Morant. That's out of the question. I don't think they're going to get rid of Jaren Jackson Jr. So that left Desmond Bain. So it wasn't really a surprise. And I think when you saw the haul the Grizzlies got back was pretty impressive with the draft picks and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Cole Anthony. And who knows if, they'll both be on the team when the season starts. I think the Grizzlies, this is a start. This is the start of something and the start of making moves. I don't think they're finished by any stretch of the imagination.
You talk about what they got in return, and I'll tell you what, when I look at this deal, it may not be initially, for an instant fix, but when you look at the long-term future of this team and what they got in return, you look at Zach Edey. He's 23 years old. You mentioned Jackson. He's 25. Cole Anthony, if he stays with the team, is 25. Morant is 25, and Scottie Pippen Jr. is 24. Then you add in 4 number one unprotected draft picks, and I think you got a swap somewhere in the mix there too. The future, if it's done correctly, of course, looks very, very bright for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Well, and they've gathered assets, and assets can be so valuable. I mean, what they got here in this Desmond Bain trade, can they move those picks? They use those picks to get another player? Can they use one of the contracts maybe of these players to get another player? This is a team that their depth needs to improve, and they don't have a lot of money, and they're not really – I don't think they're willing at this point to go into the luxury tax or go into that apron. And, it doesn't seem like that's the case right now. So how do you do it? Well, you got to be creative, and you're going to have to be creative with moves and trades and free agency and using exceptions and mid-level exceptions and things like that. They're going to have to use them to their fullest to improve this team and improve it to be a Western Conference contender.
Do you have in mind anything that you know of that an individual that they may be seeking during the offseason?
I don't. Things changed when Zach Edey, it was announced that he was going to miss the start of the season next year with this ankle surgery. And the question is, well, how long is he going to miss? Is he going to miss 20 games or is he going to miss 30 games? I mean, that's a huge difference. So, the Grizzlies, I think what you want more athletes. You want more. I mean, you want 3-and-D guys like everybody does in the NBA. you want that guy. But now the Grizzlies also have to focus their attention on, do we need a big? If Zach Edey is going to be out 20, 30 games, do we have enough size in the middle? And so I think that has to be addressed now. So there are a couple of things. You want better ball handling. You want 3-and-Ds, you want a big. So I think the Grizzlies kind of want a little bit of everything, and they're going to have to be really creative to do it.
Rob, I mean, it's obviously been all over the news, the comments by Stephen A. Smith about the Memphis area, that players don't want to go to the Memphis Grizzlies because of the crime over there. What was your assessment of his comments? Well,
I was disappointed. I I respect Stephen A. lot. I really do. I don't agree with a lot of things that he says, but that's his job, and I think he does his job very well, and he's worked very hard to get where he's at today, and I respect him a lot. I thought this comment was unfortunate. It was an unfortunate attack on the city of Memphis. The thing that took me the most is I knew the reaction from Memphis on Twitter, in the newspaper, on sports radio, was going to be very defensive and defend our city, and rightfully so. But the problem that I took away from it was this was seen nationally, and there aren't people to defend us throughout the country when something stupid is said like this. There was no reason for him to say it. There's no truth to what he said. This is my 19th season with the Memphis Grizzlies. There has never been one player that has wanted to leave because of crime. There's never been a player that hasn't come here because of crime. In fact, the Memphis Grizzlies, in the history of this organization, since they've been in Memphis, they have not lost a player that they've wanted to keep. And players who have retired Memphis Grizzlies have ended up staying and living in Memphis, including two guys who have their numbers retired, decided to move and stay in Memphis. So that this whole aspect of players aren't coming because of the crime is silly. And we look at crime in New Orleans. We look at crime in St. Louis. It hasn't hampered the Cardinals from winning World Series. I mean, no one talks about that. New Orleans, we could say San Francisco, we could say Chicago, we could say there's crime. There's crime everywhere. And I'm not going to sit here and say there's not a crime problem in Memphis. There is a crime problem in Memphis that needs to be fixed. And I think they're working hard to get it fixed. But to say that players aren't coming here because of the crime, I think was an unfair shot against Memphis, and was done in really poor taste.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with you, as I mentioned in my first segment. And I'll tell you what, Rob, I've done some history, some research myself, and you know this already, but I don't think a lot of our listeners know this, but the number one city that is attracting tourists has been Memphis, is the fastest growing tourist attraction in the United States. And there's a reason why. There is a lot to do in Memphis. And just like you said, I've been saying it, over and over again. Even the Houston Rockets today, they re-signed their head coach, I believe Udoka, if that's how we pronounce his name. Mm-hmm. Houston is a high crime area. Los Angeles is a high crime area. I don't have to tell you about New York and Philadelphia and all these areas. Right. I think what people miss here, Rob, and correct me if I'm wrong, is even though Memphis has a decent population, it's not what you or I would call a large media market area.
No, not at all. Memphis is a small market. Memphis is it's a big small town is what it is. And I think the people here are very, very proud of their city. And, it's, since those comments were made, how many times I've, been talking to friends or talking to neighbors or whatever, anyone I've talked to, it's been, really upset what he said. I can't believe he said that, we got to stick up for Memphis, and we're glad Ja Morant stood up for Memphis, and Ja tweeted out a couple of things standing up for Memphis, which was great. I mean, if Ja Morant wanted to be out of here because of crime, Ja Morant would be out of here.
Yeah, and Desmond Bain also stuck up for the city even after he left and was traded. He made comments that he's never had issues in Memphis. And, it's just ridiculous. I was surprised, I'll be honest with you, because Stephen A. didn't have the easiest upbringing. He lived in an area that was high in crime, being a New Yorker, where the New York Knicks play, where the Yankees, the Bronx had a high crime area. I was very, very surprised as well. But for him to say players aren't coming there, in my opinion, had nothing to do with the crime in Memphis. I think Memphis is a great city. It has, like I said earlier, a lot to do for people. It has great Graceland. It has the Civil Rights Museum, tours that they do for visitors. I think that there's a lot to do. And let me ask you this in closing, Rob. You've said you've been with the Grizzlies. How many years now? 19 years has it been?
This is 19, yeah.
Incredible. And I have to ask you, and I want to ask you this as a person that's, you know, been in Memphis, what, for a couple decades now. Do you feel unsafe in Memphis?
No, no. It's you know, I grew up in St. Louis, and which St. Louis is a high crime city, but you kind of learn where you should and shouldn't go. You know, I mean, you got to know your lane.
And isn't that the same in every? Isn't that the same in every city?
Yes, and it's the same in Memphis. I know a lot of people have said this week, and you know, and I know there have been a lot of people in Memphis who have felt unsafe at times. And again, crime is a problem in Memphis, but I've never felt unsafe. Never unsafe. Never felt like my children were unsafe. Have never. And you know, again, like every city, you're going to find people who have felt unsafe, and you're going to find people who have felt safe, whether it's in Chicago. You know, it's the same thing, and you're going to have that in every city. And so it doesn't make Memphis different. It upsets me that when we think of Memphis, people will think of crime, and this just added to that on a national level, and that's disappointing to me because I think it's very unfair for Memphis.
I agree 100%. You know, in closing, I want to ask you, changing the subject here for a second, Game 6 tonight, Oklahoma Thunder, who you got to see versus the Memphis Grizzlies in the playoffs already this year, taking on Indiana. In your opinion, how does this series go tonight? Does it go back to Game 7, or do you think it ends tonight?
Well, I think it depends on how Halliburton is. If he's not healthy, I think it's a wrap. I mean, I think Indiana played as well as they could in Game 5 without Halliburton, and they came up short. And I think that would be the case again tonight in Game 6. If he can have some miraculous, you know, get shot up or whatever he needs to do to play, if he can do it, I think it's going to be a great game. I mean, Indiana has surprised me throughout the series. It wouldn't surprise me tonight if they can make it close. And if they make it close, they have a great shot against this Oklahoma City team. The Thunder have done a great job closing out the last two games, but they're a little suspect when it comes to close games down the stretch. So if Indiana can keep it close, I hope they win Game 6. I'd love to see a Game 7 back in Oklahoma City. That'd be a lot of fun.
All right, Rob. Well, listen, I want to thank you very, very much for taking time out of your schedule to join us tonight on Frankly Speaking Sports.
My pleasure. Anytime. Thank you.
All right. Be safe, my friend.
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Rob Fischer, sideline and pre- and post-game host for the Memphis Grizzlies. Just a reminder, folks, that you can catch all of our videos, all of our interviews, and so on our NGSC Sports Networks, as well as on our Tobacco Road Sports Radio affiliates, and on all social media platforms. Once again, we want to thank Rob Fischer so much for taking time to talk to us about the Memphis Grizzlies, and, you know, the controversial comments made by Stephen A. Smith and some of the things the Grizzlies are doing. I'm Larry Frank, Frankly Speaking